Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. How are you tonight? Well, I hope good to be all right. So, welcome to the Minutes with MwM Show. Right now, we're live. Tomorrow, we won't be live on YouTube. Tomorrow, I hope to still be live. Right? Good Lord willing, the creeks don't rise and the earth don't open up and swallow us down. So, if you're watching this now, thank you very much. Hello, Roberto. If you're watching it after now, thank you still. So, right up the beginning, like, subscribe, share the video, share the live stream, post it up early, share it to Facebook, share it to people that you know, tell a total stranger. Hand out my business cards, Robert. I bet you still have the ones I gave you and you never given them out. I may need those back, by the way. Anywho, tonight is a little something. Might be short. I know I say that every time. Try to keep these things around 30 minutes and it never happens. But tonight might be one of those nights. Because I picked just a little trivia, I guess. I saw it on my Facebook feed today, did a little research. I guess this is probably roughly true. Snoops, not Snoop Dogg, but Snoops, uh, you have one card left. Did I give you one? I think I gave you three. Or did I give you one? I gave you 2 rounds. Anyway, next person that you see in a checkout line, give it to them. How's that? Just say, excuse me, dude, dudess, miss, ma'am, mister, please take this card. It's the only one I got left. Give it a good home. Take care of it. Call this dude so he'll leave me alone. Snoops, not Snoop Dogg, but the website that kind of fact checks things, something. I looked it up, and it's this story, this thought process, this rationale is semi-true. I didn't change any of the names. There's no innocence, nothing like that. And if you know what I'm referring to, then you're old like me. But it's about train tracks, not trains in general, just the tracks that we have now that our trains in the United States are currently using, and their width. They're 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide from rail to rail. And that's the gauge, what they call the gauge, I guess. Now, there's been narrow gauge and all kinds of different things throughout history for different reasons, used for different purposes, that kind of stuff. What I find interesting, I find several things interesting about railroads, and I am by no means an expert. I say it all the time. These are just things that come into my head. I read them, I talk about them, so I'm not an expert. But let's see what it is. The things that okay, we'll go back. Let me do this first. I'm just terrible typing. Google's got to be smarter than me. All right. So trains kind of fascinate me. Hey, there's Clell. Clell probably knows more about factual things about trains. I don't know. Maybe Robert. He's a train track dude. A lot of times free liquors are, but the trains really, if you start thinking about it, are strange. So they've got metal tracks that they roll on. Hard metal tracks. But yet the train is so heavy that when they roll over them, they flex. And they're flexible enough to where they can actually bend them while they're laying them. They put these tracks on these huge beams that are just probably, what would y'all say, maybe 8 inches wider on each side than the width of the track. And then those are laid on this bed of gravel. So 10 cents. Yeah, I'm broke, man. How about just like 5 cents? Just 5. That's all I can afford. 5 cents. So, and if you ever watch a train rolling down the track to the junction, those things, when the cars go across and the wheels hit that section of track, it just kind of goes like this. It just, every time the heavy car goes over it, it kind of bows. And then it bounces back and it bows. And it kind of bounces back and it bows. And it goes on and on. You think those things will just fall apart. It's amazing how they're built. And the wheels have a lip on the inside because there's nothing to hold them on the track except the lips on the wheels, and they're on the inside of each wheel. So, you know, they can't fall off this way, they can't fall off this way because one lip holds it on if it leans, and the other lip holds it on. So they roll down the track, and it's steel on steel wheels on steel track, and this is the only way it could work. This is the train, cars, and all the everything that makes up the train, the locomotive, all that stuff is so heavy, and there's so much friction, so much weight resting on the track and the wheels in between there. There's so much weight in there. The friction is so great that's what, you know, the train engine uses, is that friction to get traction and pull that thing on steel. So I looked it up. Think about across the United States, back when they were building these things, a long time ago. Doesn't matter what gauge rail it was or whatever. 10% grade. So that's all the maximum. 10% grade is the maximum for a normal friction-based railroad. But there are track railways that negotiate steep grades with a tooth rack rail, usually between the running rails. Trains are fitted with one or more cog wheels or pinions that mesh with the train rail. Never seen one. Never seen one. So around here, if you go to White Top and come back down the what's the trail? Damascus. You come back from White Top down to Damascus, and you come on the old railroad. It's one of the best rides you'll ever take because it's almost flat the whole way down. How do they do that? How do they do that? It's like, is it 3% grade? I don't know. And you know, I'm so lazy, I still wouldn't ride up it. The Creeper Trail. Thank you, Cleo. The Creeper Trail. Pretty crazy. In my younger, crazier, wilder days, we would all get together, pay somebody. There's a service. Pay somebody to haul you and your bicycle up, and then you ride down. You could ride back up and ride back down. But if you're really a bicyclist, you could ride up the Creeper Trail on like a mountain bike. But it's a nice, cool ride. It's not hard. It's not very strenuous, as I recall. Like I said, it's all downhill. So, but train tracks and their gauge. How far apart are the tracks? 4 foot, 8.5 inches. Well, do you know why? This is semi-true. What I'm about to tell tonight is about semi-true. So tell me if you think you know. Yeah, 30-mile bicycle ride from White Top back to Abington. I don't know if I did the full 30. A couple of times I may have, but I think you can jump into it at different places. But even at 30 miles, I mean, it wouldn't take you very long. It wouldn't take you very long to do because it's easy to go 10 miles an hour downhill on a bicycle. Take you 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Pretty nice. It's nice scenery. There's places I think you can stop along the way, little towns, little stores and stuff. It's been a long time since I rode that. So I know Robert's not 100% sure because I picked his brain at work, and I know he tuned in tonight just to find out. It's been bothering him. I could tell when we were leaving, his wheels were just cranking. You did it once, and you just mean once. Well, it's downhill, dude. It's downhill. I don't, for the most part. I think there is some uphill. I did not look it up. I'm glad you're not going ahead and reading ahead. Maybe we could rent electric bicycles and come downhill on electric bicycles. You think that might work? You know what I would like to try are those one wheel deals. That you ride them like a skateboard, and the wheels in the middle. You ride them. You lean forward on it, and it goes. You lean back, and it stops, and you can tilt them. They do off road. That would be cool. I think that would be fun. Anyway, train track. 4 foot, 8.5 inches wide. So, like everything else in life, everything, a lot of things in life, something builds. Think of a pyramid. This is kind of the way I'm thinking of it. It's probably wrong. Think of a pyramid. As we know it, at the top, there's the point. All right? Think about that as being one square. And then as a pyramid gets bigger, you add squares and you add squares, and it gets bigger and bigger at the bottom. So, think about this as just the opposite. You flip the pyramid upside down, and now it's balancing on its point. And that's where you start. You start at the bottom when it's upside down on the 1 point. One thing, okay, starts this avalanche of progression that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So, I'm not going to skip to the end because I could already finish this. I'll be done. Well, what good would that be? It's 13 minutes. I mean, you've 13 minutes to listen to me ramble. So, Clell says it flattens out level from Damascus. So at Damascus, it's pretty level going into Abington. That's what you're saying there. But when I rode it from White Top down to Damascus. There's where you had to go. You take your bicycle, you get on this tram thing, bus. They put your bicycles on a trailer. They take you up to White Top, and then you get off and you ride down. It's like a rafting trip. Have you ever been on a commercial rafting trip? Everybody piles into this bus. They take the rafts. They go upriver. They dump everybody out, put you in a raft, and you come back down to your starting point. And that's what I did. I didn't ride it all the way into Abington, just Damascus. Right? You said it was 30 miles from White Top into Abington, didn't you? Where was that? 30-mile bicycle ride from White Top back to Abington. Yeah, I didn't go to Abington. Started out at Damascus. So let's just say we're starting out at Damascus. It's pretty easy because it's downhill. Then you can go back up. Yeah. I rode the Creeper Trail out of Abington and ride along the trail. I didn't go all the way up to Damascus. Yeah. Back in my younger crazy days, me and a couple of guys, we would ride road bikes. And I never was heavy duty into it, but we would ride 20, 25 miles in an outing, ride up to Abington, turn around, come back and stuff. And, man, I'll never do that again. Train tracks. I'm going to keep saying that because I got to remember my focus. I got to keep my focus. So I'm going to try to figure out this. What I'm going to show you is on a website. I read it, just a snippet of stuff, and it was all condensed. Damascus leg of the ride is the hardest. So from Damascus back down to Abington, you're saying is the hardest. So that would make sense because the White Top's pretty steep. And so you get coming down through there, and it's pretty nice. And I think midway is, what's that little town, like Waterloo? What's the name of that place in between there? There's actually a train station there. Lots of train tracks. Like I said, there's been different gauges here locally, and across the country. Not all of them have been the 4 foot, 8.5 inches wide. But that is what we have now for our big commercial trains. And so it started out, I won't say started out, let's work backwards. So we've got the train tracks now. Alvarado, thank you very much. Cool little place. See, Clell needs to be doing these podcasts or shows, live shows, because I don't know. I talk, he knows stuff. Of course, I know Robert knows stuff. He's probably out, I don't know, petting the dog or roasting pork bellies or something. Pork butts. Which was it? Pork butts. I think he did a pork butt that I didn't get any of. Thank you very much. Everybody devoured it up before I got it. So, starting at the end, remember, we got this pyramid sitting up on its point. East Tennessee, Northwest Carolina was narrow gauge. All right, so look it up. What is narrow gauge? What I'm talking about, I don't know. Did they have numbers like gauges you put in your ear or different gauges? The trains, I think narrow, I don't know, is this wide? Is this normal? Commercial trains run on these tracks. Remember, upside down, building blocks. We're going to narrow this down to supposedly what some people think is the origin, the mother lode, the bedrock, the whole startup. So, train tracks. Trains been around a long time. Now, they didn't all start out as engines. So, trains, as we know them today, big locomotives. Before the diesel electric locomotives were steam locomotives. But they were a mechanical engine that pulled all these cars. Well, before that, before they invented the steam engine and stuff, what did they use? Well, let's see. Now, like I said, this is from the website aghost.net. And it is a history lesson, the story of railroad tracks, and it all makes sense in the end, as you can clearly see. And I got a railroad tracks like what I drew. How'd you like my artwork? If you didn't know, pay attention to it. There it is. My little doodles. Look at my little doodle. And, if you don't recognize it, that's the Coyote Tunnel. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. Ah, there it is. Okay. Doodles. U.S. standard railroad gauge distance between rails is 4 feet, 8.5 inches. And it says that's kind of an odd number, and I believe that. That's just, why not 5? Why not just 4? Why not 4, 8? therein lies the question. Okay, so we all came, or the founding fathers came over here originally from England. So a lot of what we do, they did back in England too. So that makes sense. Why, even though you came to a new country, why would you make different things? You already know what works. Why change it? So before the steam engine, you know, there was horse-drawn uh, trams, like in San Francisco. Now there are electric trams. There were horse-drawn trams. So instead of electric motor, you had horses. So instead of big steam engines, you had horses. And they pulled all kinds of things. And that happened in England because why are they 4 foot 8.5 inches wide? Because that's what they were in England. Okay, so why did the English build them at 4 foot 8.5 inches? Tramways, like I said, that were horse-drawn and they had wheels. It was the same deal. The wheels, even though they didn't roll on tracks, the wheels were 4 foot 8.5 inches apart. Okay, so now think of a train track as being a wheel track. So the width of the wheels of these wagons and trams, and those kind of things in England, before everybody moved to the United States now, was 4 foot 8.5 inches. That's what they made them. Why did they make them 4 foot 8.5 inches? Why didn't they make the wheelbase 8, 5, 7, 10 feet wide? Well, let's read on. And the reason I'm not showing this to you like I normally do is because I'm reading it and elaborating, puffing it up, you know, making it take longer than it should. Let's see. Narrow gauge lets the trains go around tighter curves. Right, I can see that. So Clell's putting a little geometry into this scenario. And Robert said when he was a kid, we took a tour on the East Tennessee, West North Carolina Railroad through Doe River Gorge to North Carolina. Now, I rode a narrow gauge train in the Doe River, but it went up so far, went to some place. I was a kid, stopped, and then we came back down. So it almost like went up this. It was pretty cool, you know. Went up into this area in the mountains. It stopped and came back. How far it went up? How far did it go all the way to North Carolina? I'm not sure. I couldn't say for sure, but it was fun. And I rode, of course, Tweetsie Railroad, and that's fun. But that's just like a big circle around this hill. I wonder what they do now to make that exciting. See, before it was, you know, when I was a kid, it was cowboys and Indians on the track, and they used really loud blank guns and stuff. But that's one of the reasons I'm not showing you what I'm reading, is because I'm talking it up. I'm making it a production. See, we could have already been done if I just showed it to you and read it straight through. So, back to the wagons in England, 4 foot 8.5 inches. That's what their wheels were. Why did they make their wagons wheels 4 foot 8.5 inches? So it talks about here jigs and tools and all that stuff. Basically, that's just the way the construction, you know, was set up. The making of the wagons, that's the way they were set up. But that had to start somewhere. Okay, so now you see we're at the railroad tracks and we're starting to widen out here. We're starting to get, you know, from that point up. It's getting a little thicker. Goes, all right. So that's what they made the wagon wheels out of. So why did they do that? Why were wagons have that particular odd wheel spacing? Well, if they tried to use any other spacing, the wagon wheels would break on some of the old long distance roads in England. All right. Now, this is something I was looking at before. Let's see. What are the long distance roads of England? So, because this is kind of important, long list of long distance footpaths. No. What is the longest long distance path? No. Not walks. Why did it choose walks? I picked roads, not walks. Put that in quotes. Let's see what that picks up. So, it doesn't tell me what a long distance road is in Europe. Let's say I say of England. Let's say in Europe, because that's kind of what we're talking about here. You'll see. Why are the ties 8.5 feet long when the width of the rails are only 4? Because of the overhang, right? So I'm thinking the 4.5 or the 4 foot 8.5 inches wide is center to center on the rail, because that's what I would consider if we're looking at wagon wheels. Then you're probably looking at the wheel itself, not the outside or the inside, but just like in the middle of it. All right. So I would think that it gives you, space on the outside of the track on either side, right? The hangover of the tie or the part that sticks out past the track. And that's probably for stability. And maybe like this, they had things that would cut smooth, level paths that were 8 foot wide. Maybe that was 8.5 feet wide. I don't know. That wasn't in my story. I don't know. Ooh, that was a pretty nose. Broad base for stability. Stability. What is all this noise going on? Is that my phone in my pocket? The phone on my thing, hip? What is it? Oh no. It's Robert. It's Robert sending me stuff about the Doe River Gorge. I have to look at that. Long distance roads, speed tag. I can't tell you. I was hoping I could find out. You'll find out here in a minute why long distance roads were important. All right. Why did the wagons have particular odd wheel spacings? If they tried to use other spacing, the wagon wheels would break in some of the old long distance roads in England because of the spacing of the wheel ruts. So now we're getting down to a practical reason why this was the way it was. Why were wagons the same width? Is because before they used all these trams and these wagons, the ruts in the roads were so wide, but the ruts were made at that distance. So 4 foot 8.5 inches was grooved into the dirt roads already. Now it's hard to believe, and I know, but if you're making roads out of dirt and it rains, then certain areas have certain types of soil, and as the wagons and everything roll through there, they make ruts, and then those dry into ruts. And I doubt if they had people going along filling in the ruts. So then you come along in your wagon after the rain 2 days later, and there's ruts in the road. Now you can steer over them and make the horses walk in the ruts, or you could just roll right down through the ruts. Well, let's say your wagon didn't have the same spacing. If it was wider enough, then okay, it would straddle them. But if it was just a few inches wider, then one might drop into the rut and get all wiggied up and break. So your best bet was to have the same wheelbase, the same gauge as the dude that made the ruts in the road. And if you did that and you ran through his ruts, then the ruts get deeper and they get deeper and they get harder, and that becomes more of the standard because everybody in this area now has wagons that are made by the same people, that have the same track gauge, 4 foot 8.5 inches wide. Doesn't matter how long the wagon is. I'm sure that's probably one of the things too, because that's what everybody had. That's what everybody made. And why did they make them all like that? Was somebody go out there and measure the ruts one day and say, hey, this guy's ruts are 4 foot 8.5 inches apart. That's why I need to start building my wagons. No. It's been like that. It was like that. So, who built those old rutted roads? And now this takes a huge jump. I mean, a huge jump for me. So you start thinking, I think of wagons, especially the one they use in this picture here. I think of wagons as being just like this. And if this is what they're showing me, then let me show you the picture. All right, so they're showing this old Conestoga covered wagon. So his wheels are 4 feet 8.5 inches apart. Why? Why are they that far? Because that's the way the dudes made the wagons. Okay, so there's the gauge, railroad. So now you've got wagons, and then you've got roads. So see the road, how it is, and how it's all rutted? You weren't passing people. I guess, if somebody came this way and you were going that way, you kind of had to jump your cart, your wagon, out of the ruts. Cart ruts from Malta. Let's see. But I'm waiting. You want me to read the... You can wait to the end of the show, Robert, till I read your little thing on the Doe River, can't you? Or do I need to read it now? Think you'll fall asleep? Well, where's Hobo Shoestring? He knows this stuff. I don't know. Which one of them's Hobo Shoestring? Cart ruts from Malta? Shy about what? I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with Robert. I don't know what he's talking about. Of course, all this stuff goes over my head. Clell Robert kind of have this thing going, and I'm playing catch up. I don't know. So it asks, who built those old rutted roads? And then this is where it takes a huge jump, like I was saying, for me, because I'm thinking of Old West. But you got to think out back way before those times. Not in just England, but like I said, in Europe. Okay. Think big, think old. Think before cowboy days. Think before, England was England. So the Imperial Rome built the first long distance roads in Europe, including England, for their legions. Shoestring is a dude I follow on YouTube from Piney Flats. Rides the rails for real. That spoon lady that I was watching on YouTube used to ride the rails, and she kind of landed in Asheville, and she plays the spoons like it's just crazy. I watch a Irish Gaelic band, uh, Gaelic Storm, and the lead singer Murphy. He plays the spoons awesome, but man, she plays really well, and she uses just regular old spoons out of the kitchen drawer, best I can tell. And she's a show person too. When she's playing the spoons, it's just like she's dancing with these things. Anyway, so maybe you get Shoestring to come on or watch this show. He probably think I'm an idiot. So Imperial Rome, way back in the day, they made these long distance roads in Europe. Those roads have been used ever since. So why reinvent the wheel? Why make new roads? You don't need to. The Romans went out and whipped everybody's butt and took over lots of things. So they moved stuff on these roads. You know, not only soldiers but supplies, trade routes, all this stuff. And they were all what? Using wagons. All used wagons and carts. What was the wheelbase, do you think? Or the gauge? 4 foot, 8.5 inches from wheel to wheel. And they rutted the roads. Terrible, probably. And nobody was keeping them up. So you either ran in the ruts or you broke wheels. So, and then all the guys that built carts and wagons and then big Conestoga wagons, they built them that way. Their daddies built them that way. Their granddaddies built them that way. When they come to America, they build them that way. And so guess what? The roads in America started getting rutted just like that. And that's the way everybody was used to make them. But we go back still further. Why did the Roman legions build their wagons and carts with the wheels spaced 4 foot, 8.5 inches? Right? So, keep going back. This pyramid's on the train tracks at the tip. Now it's going way back, way back, way back in time, way back in time. In my mind. Don't do it. And the ruts in the roads. Roman war chariots formed the initial ruts, which everyone else had to match, fear destroying their wagon wheels. So Rome went out and whipped everybody's butt. It wasn't merchants, it wasn't people selling, dresses and shoes. It was soldiers. So soldiers, of course, not the foot soldiers, the special ones that got to ride in the chariots, rode these roads, made these roads, and they rutted the roads. And guess what? The chariot's wheel spacing was 4 foot, 8.5 inches. So this is the part that's kind of tongue-in-cheek. How would you ever know for sure? Because they didn't measure in feet. Maybe it makes a little more sense in meters or leagues or whatever they were using back in the day when they were making, Roman chariots to do battle. Maybe it was a round number. I didn't look that up. Let's look up. Let's go. 4 feet, 8.5 inches, 0.5 in meters. All right. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? No. Let's get out of that junk. Dude, man, just give me an answer. It says here 1.435 meters. let's go to centimeters. 143.5 centimeters. Maybe that was it. Maybe everything was measured in centimeters and it was 143.5 centimeters between wheels. And that's the same thing as 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Maybe that's why. In centimeters, it was a good semi-round number. All right, so chariots, war chariots, and there you have it. Since the chariots were made for imperial Rome, they were all alike in the matter of wheel spacing. Therefore, the United States standard rail gauge of 4 feet 8.5 inches is derived from the original specifications for an imperial Roman war chariot. In other words, bureaucrats live forever. All right, so there you have it. There's your war chariot. It had the 4 foot 8.5 inches of wheel footprint or gauge. These dudes rode out to take over the world, and they took over lots of Europe. They built roads. These guys rode on them first. Then along came their wagons. Along came their, you know, carts drawn by horses, oxen, whatever it was. And so they all traveled the same roads. They traveled the same ruts. And everybody that built these built the wagons that went out. And there you have it. It was just common. But why? Why would the Romans build these war chariots 4 feet 8.5 inches between the wheels? Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. So the next time you handle the specification procedure process and wonder what a horse's ass came up with this, you may be exactly right. Imperial Roman army chariots were made just wide enough to accommodate the rear ends of 2 war horses. So, if you look at this picture, the wheels and probably the width from cheek to cheek on these 2 horses is pretty close. Now, I would think if I was building a chariot and I had horses, I would make it a little wider so that when the horses pooped, my wheels wouldn't be running through it and slinging crap everywhere. So maybe it's a little wider. But the reason they're the width they are is because the war chariots were pulled by 2 horses and they wanted the wheels to be, they wanted them to be stable. They wanted them to cover the width of 2 horses' butts. So that's how they started doing it. Now, funny thing about this, and the reason I drew a tunnel on my little picture is this all comes around to a funny little, I don't know, a story, I guess is what you'd call it. So now there's a twist to the story. So, on the space shuttle sits up on the rocket, and on the sides of the rocket are 2 solid fuel boosters. Okay, and they're pretty skinny, they're orange, and they light off to get the initial thrust, and then when they get up so far, they peel off. Well, those things aren't built on location. Can you guess? They're actually, let's see, 2 big rocket boosters launched on the side of the main fuel tank. They're solid rocket boosters, SRBs. The SRBs are made by some factory, and they're built in Utah. And they're shipped by what? They're shipped by rails. So the engineers who designed the SRBs would have preferred to make them a bit larger, but the SRBs had to be shipped by train from the factory to the launch site. The railroad line from the factory happens to run through a tunnel in the mountains, and the SRBs had to fit through the tunnel. The tunnel is slightly wider than the railroad track, and the railroad tracks, as you know about, is the width of 2 horses. So I don't know if that's the actual tunnel, but The solid rocket boosters have to fit through a tunnel hole that, they don't give them. You can't, I bet this engineer, if he reached his arm out, he could probably touch the side of that tunnel. So a major space shuttle design feature of what is arguably the world's most advanced transportation system was determined over 2,000 years ago by the width of two horses' asses. And you thought being a horse's ass wasn't important. So there's the little part of history. And I stretched it out to 45 minutes. A lot of poof in there. A lot of poof in there. So here are your rocket boosters on the sides. Okay? Solid rocket boosters. So those have to fit through the tunnel. And the reason the tunnel is as wide as it is because the train has to fit through there. And the train as wide as it is because the wagons on the roads made ruts. And so everybody's wagon wheels had to fit in the ruts. And those wagons were made that wide because the chariots were that wide. And the chariots were that wide so they could fit two horses in between them and pull the war chariot. So, like I said at the beginning, is this true, hardened, proven fact? I can't say that. But it makes for a good story. And like I said, it was just like the pyramid on its top. Basically, one thing, some dude or dudette, but I guarantee it's probably a dude, in Roman times. Now, you got to go back even before Roman was a superpower. Why? Because there had to be that first guy, that one guy that the emperor went to or sent somebody to and said, you need to come up with a design a dude or dudes can stand in and fight from. And it has to be fast, and it has to be agile, and it has to be sturdy, and it has to be stable. They're throwing spears from this. I mean, in the movies, they show them shooting arrows from. I don't know if that's true or not. But it's carrying these guys or guy into battle, and it's powered by two horses. Figure me out something. So somehow, somebody had the original design that thing was going to be 4 foot, 8.5 inches at the wheelbase, and that gave it enough room for the chariot. It gave enough room to have the horses squeezed in there with the piece in the middle, the tongue that the horses had to attach to. Maybe they had one. Maybe it was all leather. I don't know. But that guy, that one guy at the bottom of the pyramid made all that happen. All that happen. And now, millions and millions of items are shipped rail on tracks that are 4 foot, 8.5 inches wide. And there he was. Just trying to do a good job so the emperor wouldn't have him killed. And, was it right the first time? Maybe not. But I bet you, guarantee, they come up with that wheel design, that width, and it worked. And it worked well. It worked well enough. They continued on. And then that dude, once he got a reputation for building the chariots, he got all kinds of orders for wagons and carts and all that stuff. I bet his business grew. So, there you have it. That was tonight's history lesson. And like I said, when I read it, I thought, holy cow, that's crazy. Who says that one person can't make a difference in the world? Because he made a huge difference, or they made a huge difference. But you got to figure out. Maybe it was, I'm talking about going back in time. Now you're thinking, well, I'd like to go back and meet the guy or guys that came up with, well, I think the chariot ought to be this wide. Make it too skinny or too wide. It won't fit through here, it won't go through there. Who knows why? Maybe the streets in Rome were pretty narrow and he compromised. Wider, stabler, but, hey, maybe they got to ride two abreast through the main street of Rome. It was only so wide. just like two horses' butts. So anyway, now you know why when you see these Conestoga wagons, even though they're pulled by maybe a team of horses, they're only two wide. Except now, if you watch Ben-Hur, them dudes, they run with 3 and 4 horses wide in their chariots. But they were racing to the death. So there you have it. All right, everybody. Remember that. Wait a minute. Robert, just about forgot you, bud. Just about forgot you. 4 foot, 8.5 inches wide. I've said it enough so that anybody out there ever gets into a trivia game, 4 foot, 8.5 inches wide. What's the significance of that? Well, you talk about train tracks, you want to talk about Conestoga wagons, or you want to talk about Roman chariots. All right, so Doe River Gorge, place here locally over in Elizabethton, outside Elizabethton. In the early 1800s, the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad, ET and WNC, built their narrow gauge line from Johnson City, Tennessee through the mountains to reach a source of high-grade iron ore in Cranberry, North Carolina. The Doe River Gorge provided passage through the first range, but not without serious challenge. An entirely cut and fill route had to be blasted through the gorge above the rushing Doe River, hugging narrow ledges, squeezing through tight tunnels, and crossing the river several times. An amazing civil engineer feat at the time. Hell, that'd be amazing now. The narrow gauge line opened to Cranberry July 3rd, 1882, and began hauling the iron ore as well as passengers and other freight. Later, the line was extended to Boone, North Carolina, and served the region for many years as a faithful little train that endeared itself to its people, eventually earning the nickname Tweetsie. There's a squeaky wheel. The iron ore traffic died in the late 1920s, but the tenacious little line held on with meager trains of mixed freight and mail contract. But as the highways through the mountains improved, competition from trucks finally caught up with the beloved little narrow gauge. The last revenue train that ran October 16th, 1950, and the rails were pulled up in 1951. The standard gauge portion between Johnson City and Elizabethton continued to operate, becoming the East Tennessee Railway in 1883. Traffic to Elizabethton ceased, and in 2003, but the ET Railway still handles local Johnson City traffic and continues to maintain 2 diesel locomotives in the original engine house that still has narrow gauge service pits. Wow. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Robert says it was straight down a very long way. Well, it never ceases to amaze me. I took a steam train ride from North Carolina. I wish I could remember now. It was over near Cherokee, but it was just a few miles. And it ran, of course, like right along the river, like this probably did a lot. And, we rode up to the little town. They had, passenger cars that you faced out so that you could see the scenery as you went by. And it was fun. That steam engine, blowing smoke, all that. And it was fun. It was fun. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for staying. Share it, like it, subscribe. Still at 95 subscribers. And I think that's pretty good. Still trying to reach 100. Tell everybody you know, check it out. If they've got a question about railroads, ask somebody else, because I don't know. I don't know at all, really. Yep, still at 95 subscribers. I've got 138 videos out there. Woohoo! All right, so Clell says, what causes the wheels on a train to squeak and squeal? It's called shelling. So says shoestring. Shelling. Interesting. you ever watched any of these old war movies or cowboy movies or whatever, where the train hauled all the gold and everything, they used to grease the train tracks. I bet that was a real pain in the butt. I bet that was, because I mean, you know, you get grease on it, and then the train starts to spin, and it gets all the wheels gets grease on it, then it can't get any traction, and just comes to a screeching halt or a slicky halt, maybe a shelling halt. All right, I think that's it. Appreciate everybody. Say 99. Bye. Y'all have a good weekend. I know I'm going to be working at the house. So anyway, shoulders of the wheels grinding. Is that what it means? Is shelling? Yep. Like I said, the wheels have that ring around the inside. That's the only thing that keeps them from just sliding right off the track. So I bet they do a lot of rubbing and squealing on those, because that's what, you know, holds the train on the track. All righty. Distribution of weight. Nope. See y'all. Bye, everybody. Y'all come back now. You hear?